Hi everyone, welcome to another recipe of Nanny's that just was different, slightly sometimes or sometimes dramatically different from everyone else in the family. I don't know if anybody else insisted on using Mostaccioli Rigati for what most people call baked ziti. Now I'm going to zoom this in because you can see it's number 86. Now I have been living in Georgia since 2007 and I was unable to find this pasta anywhere. Same thing with Ditali. You can't get Mostaccioli Rigati or Ditali because there's a more popular brand or type of pasta that has kind of replaced it. Ditalini for the Ditali, and for this it's Penne Rigati. But as you can see in the picture here, this is about 25% longer. Now it also has the lines in it. I'll show you that later, and it's cut on an angle. So you can use Penne Rigati, but for some reason it's just not the same. But I have to tell you the story of when Carrie used to fuss because we only had certain types of pasta. If it wasn't number 86 for our quote unquote baked ziti, she we wouldn't eat it. And she ate it like this for quite some time at our house, and we went to a restaurant once and she saw baked ziti, which is what we called it, and it had the ziti, quote unquote, noodles without being cut on the angle and without the stripes, and she couldn't eat it. That's a true story. I wasn't sure if it was a restaurant or maybe we went to one of my aunt's house and they did the authentic, quote unquote, baked ziti, which just uses ziti, and she looked at it and just didn't take any. I don't remember the whole story, but I'm probably making half of it up. But she understood after living and eating with us for many years that there were certain pastas that had to go with certain meals. So we're going to be able to make Mostaccioli Rigati baked ziti, because I was able to find these when I was in Philadelphia. I bought a bunch of them. We're also just going to show you the ingredients for now. I'm going to put some herbs, fresh herbs. When you do this, you're going to want to put fresh herbs that you're going to mix with the ricotta. Now, I forgot to take out 2 eggs. We're going to have 2 eggs, 2 large eggs that you're going to beat. You're going to, this is, it's mozzarella. You can't really go wrong with mozzarella. Get the store brand. This one has an Italian name. I'm sure it's made in Milwaukee. At least they give it a try. But this has to be authentic. This is authentic Pecorino Romano cheese from Italy. And you can tell. You see it gets dark around the edge and it's almost yellow. Don't use the white stuff, and please don't use the stuff in the can. Okay, and some of the things that you're going to make, the tomato sauce. Find the recipe for Nanny's tomato sauce. And you're going to make the meatballs. So you make those ahead of time. There's some sausages and meatballs that I cooked in the sauce when I made the sauce. And then you want to make the naked eggplant, because we're just going to use this as a topping on top of the baked Mostaccioli Rigati. And you need a big bowl like this. You need a big pot to cook 2 pounds of pasta. You know, my favorite pot. A little salt in there. And then a big bowl. You're going to mix all the ingredients. We'll record that all later. As far as cooking the pasta, just do what's on the box. There's debates everywhere. You should cook it a little less because it's going to dry out in the oven. You should cook it a little more. You should cook it a little more because it's going to dry out in the oven, or cook it a little less because it's going to cook in the oven. But you're really just warming it up in the oven, and especially if you're making it and then just putting it in the oven for 10 minutes because you're bringing it tonight, which I'm bringing to parish group meeting tonight. You don't really need to worry about that. But I would say do exactly what's on the box. Make sure it's al dente, which is going to be preferred anyway. What some people will do with this, I'll tell you about that later, is whatever's left over, you put it in a frying pan with olive oil and heat it up and almost make the Mostaccioli Rigati crunchy. And it is delicious. If I have any left over, I'll do that on a separate video. I just had a flashback moment. Listen to the sound pouring the Mostaccioli Rigati into the water. I always got to do that. It was one of my jobs, was to put the pasta in the water, start with a wooden spoon. This is when I was 10 years old, and all my life. And then, of course, I was the one who stood by to taste it, so it was perfect. I think I've told the story where I would taste it and I'd say to my mom, 15 more seconds. And she'd cook it 15 more seconds and it was perfect. Okay, and you want to stir it a couple of times while the pasta's cooking. Don't put olive oil in it, just salt in the water, let it cook. When we strain it, I'm going to not start recording again until everything's ready to stop being mixed up. When you strain it, some people again will tell you don't rinse it off in cold water, it washes away the starch. Nonsense. You're not washing anything off, you're cooling it down. So you want to make sure, because it's going to cook a little further when you have it in that strainer. So if you take it out al dente and you just put it in the strainer and don't cool it down with cold water, you're going to end up with overcooked pasta. So I would recommend cold water, just spray it. It's not going to chill it too much, but then you could start preparing it. You're going to be mixing it with the cheese mixture, which is going to cool it off, and that'll also stop it from cooking. I'm flashing back to different things that I would do that was different, or that my mom would do that was different. Most people want to use a grater like this to grate the cheese, and that's fine if you're grating it over pasta. But you want to use something like this. This is probably more of a zester than it is a grater. But you would either use this. If you have a grater that has smaller slots than this, you could use that as well. But that's what you want to do to get about. I'm going to go with a lot of this cheese. This cheese is very expensive. Let's see how much this cheese was. $12.99 a pound, and that's at the food market, which is like 30% less than the farmer's market, which is lower than most people. But you're gonna do a half a cup. I may even go closer to 2 cups. I would put a half a cup if I was making only 1 pound of pasta. We're making 2 pounds because I'm going to freeze one, so I'm going to go with probably 2 of these, which is a half a cup, so full cup. So you can see it's a little more kind of a shredded cheese. And by the way, I bought the mozzarella whole, and that's way too much. I'm probably going to use 3/4 of that. But you wonder why I didn't get these already shredded mozzarella. I would have, but it would have been fine. But I'm going to slice some of that mozzarella and put it on top. You'll see when I do it. But if you do want to shred the mozzarella, you're going to have to shred the mozzarella for the probably 2 cups of, well, I don't know. Again, it's up to how much you like cheese. But I'll probably, like I said, use some of this to just put slices on top of the baked Mostaccioli Rigati, and the rest I'm going to shred. I'm going to get an idea of what I want. I would say it's probably going to be about a cup as well. Oh, and you're using a whole pound of ricotta, so you'd have to get 2 of those small ones, or 1 of these whole milk, of course, you want to use. I'm going to show you this because it might not be normal for most people, but you see I'm just holding it in my hand and doing it. Most of it's going inside, some is going outside, and eventually you'll have it all done. You're going to want to get at least a cup. And it's probably a little bit more than a cup, but that's kind of what it looks like. It almost comes out like little balls. And you're going to mix that in with the other cheese and the ricotta. And the 2 eggs and the chopped herbs. I'll try to get that all done and just give you a quick look at that. Again, the amount of herbs is going to be up to you. That's like 1 sprig of rosemary and a few sprigs of oregano. I might add a little bit more, but you don't want to overdo it with this. Of course, if you have basil, put it in, but here's what's left of my basil plant. I don't know, I just cannot grow basil. Okay, and then of course you're going to also put salt and pepper in there, to taste. So far I got the 2 cheeses in there. We're going to add the ricotta, we're going to add the chopped up herbs, and then we're going to beat an egg and mix that all up with our hands. Yeah, you got to get in there with your hands. Make sure it's thoroughly mixed. Then we're going to put the pasta together with the cheese back in the pot with the heat off and mix everything up in that pot. You can do it in here too, but the pot's bigger and it's easier to work with. Okay, so you can see I chopped that very, very fine. It's just as fine as you would get if you were using dried herbs. And a little trick is, if you don't have the fresh herbs, you could just use Italian seasoning. Again, I prefer herb de Provence because it has rosemary in it, and I love rosemary. So, but you would chop it fine. If you wanted to use the dried, you would take your ricotta, mix the herbs, about a tablespoon or 2, into the ricotta, and let it sit overnight. And just mix it right up in that container, and that'll rehydrate it. And that'll work too. Sometimes kind of gives it a weird color. The green is much prettier and brighter, but get the fresh herbs if you can. As I was cracking the eggs, I was remembering, the reason you need to still cook it, even though you're just heating it up, but you're going to cook it for at least 20 minutes, go as far as 30 minutes, because you are putting raw egg in there. So you want to make sure that that gets incorporated. We're going to mix the pasta into this. This bowl might be big enough. I'm going to try throwing the pasta right in here and mixing it. We're also going to throw in about a half a cup, maybe a cup of that tomato sauce, and mix that all together. And then we're going to put it in one of those trays. Okay, I don't know what made me think that bowl was going to be big enough. It's back in the pot. And now you can see I'm mixing it up. I'm just going to, and you just want the sauce in there to kind of make sure you get it through everything. Now, one thing about the tomato sauce, you can follow the Nanny's tomato sauce recipe, but make it the day before, 2 days before. You can even freeze it and then defrost it. If you're going to defrost it, best to do it in the refrigerator from the freezer and leave it there at least overnight, but up to 24 hours. And but it's important to have all cold ingredients. You want to put cold tomato sauce in there too. It does make a difference. Boy, that's nice and thick. Yeah, I cooked it really thick, so that's probably more than enough because it is very concentrated, but it's about a cup, but I may add more. And then you're just going to mix that all together thoroughly with your wooden spoon. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, now I think I showed this in another time when I made the baked penne, but you can prepare the pan that you're putting it in with the tomato sauce. You just want to tomato sauce around the bottom, push it up the edges a little. If you want to spray it with Pam first, usually isn't a problem. It's not going to be a problem. Then we're going to just pour that in there and spread it and make it even. And this is kind of the color you want, kind of like a light pink. That much sauce. I almost forgot to record what I did. All right, so you can see I put all the macaroni in there, all the pasta. I then covered it with sauce, just very lightly with sauce, and then I sliced some meatballs and some eggplant. See the eggplant? So you got a meatball and an eggplant, meatball and eggplant. Again, it's a slice of the meatball. We'll have more meatballs. And then just kind of threw around those slices of mozzarella. Now we got to get it in the oven because it's got to cook for 30 minutes and I got to get out of here. Hope everybody likes it.